Today is February 5th, 2022. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche, Chestokom Aki. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married name is Michelle Robinson. I use she and her pronouns. Native Calgarian is being recorded on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border, or the Blackfeet north of the border, are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Wesley, Chiniki, and Bears Paw nations of the Stoney Nation, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status, and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mokinstis has Michelle Elliott, an English name, which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. My father is so Canadian, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having an Indian Act imposed status card. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, not hare people like rabbits, also called the Great Bear Lake people in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is a visitor to this area of Quincho Tine Intahe in Satu Dene, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and honoring your role as a treaty partner. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. All mistakes and misinterpretations will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous. I just share what I know as I walk down my red road. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to my previous donors for already showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. Giving a review helps, whichever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel where you can go and subscribe, and you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And today I have my good friend Matt on. And Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Why, thank you. So yes, I am Matt Ashcroft. I go by he, him pronouns. I am a conversion therapy survivor and activist that had been responsible for ending conversion therapy in Canada. We have no glass ceilings. So we made sure that we did it for adults as well as children. I'm grateful to be here. I'm so glad that we're friends.
Oh God, me too. It was funny because I seen you and it was like, we are going to have a talk.
Oh yeah, I was like, fine. I guess no, but seriously, you're one of my favorite people, and I'm glad to be on this podcast.
And vice versa. Oh my God, Matt, what a hell of a week I've had. Tell me. Okay, so we had this scheduled, and this was prior to this insanity of the convoy that's happening across the freaking country. And you and I, for all the different causes that we talk about, have never had this kind of support, my friend. What the hell?
Yeah. This convoy thing is very interesting because it's interesting because it seems like a lot of the folks that are in Ottawa are from Alberta. So that's interesting.
So you get to see the hellhole I live in, and now we're spreading it across the country.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting what you see online, like the swastikas, "Don't tread on me" flags. You see just hateful rhetoric online, them trying to switch the narrative and say what is racist, what is not racist. We get to decide that. There's white people do not get to decide what is racist and what is not racist. And we saw what we saw, and we refuse to be gaslit.
Yes. Yeah. And ironically, I had the interview, this time last year maybe, and there was a Confederate flag that went off in one of our cemeteries, like one of the historical cemeteries of Calgary, and City News covered it. I was really grateful, but it was really depressing how little coverage it got. It didn't go national in any capacity, and we I came across these two boys who like put their arms up and did a whole like Hail Hitler thing. And I had it on my dash cam, and I was like screaming auntie, like, what the fuck are you two doing, nephews? Like, would you even know what you're doing? And yeah, nobody cared. But now that nationally people are seeing how shitty Albertans actually are, now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, maybe she had something to say. And it's like, now you listen to me, shut the fuck up.
It was interesting. I was actually doing an assignment on this where we were like in my queer indigenous politics class, actually. Ironically enough, we're talking about 50% of two-spirit and trans identified indigenous folks do get either assaulted or sexually assaulted. And this is not reported. So I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what you just said. We don't get the coverage, and it seems like there are folks that are not caring enough to give the coverage, unless it affects them. Unless if it affects them. If it doesn't affect them, I don't see anything. I don't say anything.
Right. So like all of this talk that we've been talking about with the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit, I swear to God, has gone in one ear and out the other. How many times have I told organizations, if you don't include a 2 in your acronym of LGBTQ2+, then you are excluding Indigenous, you're not good treaty partners, you're not acknowledging the violence of Two-Spirit, you just don't get it. And honestly, like I've put that out there year after year after year after year, and I still hear it so predominantly. And I just don't think people get it. So I'm glad to hear you guys are talking about it in the class, at least, because at least whoever's in that class is aware this report mattered for a reason. Like these calls to justice need to be implemented, and it doesn't just affect Indigenous. It literally helps everyone. It helps all people of color. It helps all LGBTQ2+, and it helps the society as a whole with this incredible male toxicity that we get to see on full display right now. It's just awful.
And here's another thing that I learned about the class. Being queer, trans, non-binary, and two-spirit has came from indigenous folks. And so it is white settler colonialism that gets to decide what we do and what we not do. Isn't that interesting?
There is a fabulous book. I can't stress this book enough. It's called The Importance of Monogamy. And this book changed my worldview because it showed how, we have these worldviews as Indigenous people about being non-binary and just being ourselves. And then when this forced Christianity came on to take the land, this is what they imposed. And that's why conversion therapy, to me, is an extension of the Indian residential school, the assimilation process, all of that. That's why I've always, talked to you about that in this way, because it's the same thing, only that it's an extreme sexual violence and trauma being imposed on anyone LGBTQ2+. And I wish to God that people understood the gravity of having a way of life change like that because somebody wanted to steal land. That was the whole purpose, because I was in geomatics. And that was the whole purpose of gridding Western Canada and making it into the sections and quarter sections so that it could be sold off, so that it could be given to white settlers from Britain. And now, of course, anyone in the Commonwealth. So that's why you see anyone who was a part of the Commonwealth now owning the land here. It's just incredible.
There's a lot, and there's a lot to unpack with what you just said.
I know, right?
So let's get into it.
Yep.
Let's get into it. We'll start with like the heteronormativity that is from white settlers. So white settlers tend to have the narrative and be bullies and not
violent bullies. Yep.
Yeah, and not fight for rights and equality, but fighting for their own individual freedoms. We'll use that loosely in quotations. I have yet to hear any of these protesters protest for Indigenous rights, for Black Lives Matter, for even like donations to the clean drinking water for Indigenous folks. They had the means and the money and the tools to do this, but they're choosing to have white tears crying because they don't want to get a needle. It's literally white tears. So I don't feel bad for them at all.
No.
In fact, I feel bad for the people that are stuck at the border, because what that does, they're actually delivering goods, and they're vaccinated, and they're brown folks who just want to have employment. And here are the white folks again, trying to control the narrative on what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
And
ironically, it is the truckers themselves who are the majority POC now. And you have this small minority of white people trying to talk for all truckers. And now truckers, it's interesting from my point of view, because like Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, have been talking about the violence from truckers and how many of us go missing and murdered from them. And everybody's like, oh my God, how can you talk about truckers like that? If it wasn't for truckers, you wouldn't have the food on your table. And this is for years. Years we've been talking about this. And now it's like, now you get to see what the fuck we were talking about, you fucking like gaslighting jerks.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Like, now in 2022, you need to refuse being gaslit by anybody.
Yeah.
If you see it happening, oh, it actually wasn't this, is actually this. Well, my eyes see what my eyes see. And I've experienced racism. Racism is a system. So it's a system that oppresses a race.
Yeah.
I happen to be Black. You happen to be Indigenous. We know what racism is. Thank you for educating me on what racism is. That makes sense.
Oh my God, it's so wild to me how many people have thought, like, you should see my private messages that people are sending me. I've been wanting to kind of expose them, but the problem with that is that people are so dumb, and they'd be like, oh yeah, no, that's totally legit, Michelle, you should listen to that. And it's like, what is wrong with you? What happened to you that you like have gotten to this extreme? I've had two friendships that I had to, like, we had to talk on the phone, and one had all sorts of different accusations and assumptions about where I stood, and never bothered asking me about how I feel about vaccines or nothing. And like, I literally have a history in Alberta on vaccines, about changing their narrative to things to accommodate POC, and people are 100% ignoring that, because why would on earth would they listen to me? So it's incredible. I had somebody accuse me of never doing anything for this country, which actually I found so funny. I had to share it. Oh no, it was so funny. I had to share it.
Do they not know who you are?
No, they don't. Like, that's the thing about these folks. They just, like, because that's the violence you and I receive. You're a Black gay man. I'm just a stupid fucking squaw. So I'm just going to send shitty texts and messages and not know who I'm talking to. And ironically, of course, they're talking to some of the people that are doing the actual work in this country that they refuse to fucking lift the finger for. So it's actually, it's hysterical actually, when people send some of these messages, because they're so ludicrous and like, incredible. I can't even believe it. So anyway, I don't mean to take away from the work that you're doing, but I really want people to like hear the organizations that we should be supporting you with and what you've been doing, because I have Devin Hargraves out here in Lethbridge, Alberta.
I love Devin.
Yeah, I know. And well, he put up my husband for a month in Lethbridge. Hey.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he has helped our family so much from the Lethbridge experience.
He's so amazing.
He's a beautiful human being. His wife, amazing. They have animals that are so cute, I can't even, like, just beautiful human beings. So shout out to Devin, one.
Yes.
He started the petition to ban conversion therapy. So to me, that was a huge win, because I think, like, the very few, like, you know, Albertans that have a brain that are like trying to do the work. Like this is a great example of it, wanting to support folks like yourself being in Toronto, like hola.
Oh yeah, like Devin Hargreaves was the reason why, one of the reasons why that I got into this. Like I was trying to find people that were wanting to do the cause, and Devin and I were in the same CBC article. So literally my second CBC interview, Devin and I were in the same article, and then we continued from there. Yeah, if it wasn't for Devin and the signatures and exploring my own story and my conversion therapist coming out as gay, and like I wouldn't be in the situation that I am talking about this with you on such a major historical win that we had in Canada.
Oh, it's so great. You know, just to give you an idea of how redneck and awful it is in like Alberta and Lethbridge, like there's a small town outside of Lethbridge called Tabor, and the LGBTQ2 plus community that's in that area might be the toughest motherfuckers in the entire country. Because just to give you an idea, the town, the patriarchy is so against them in every capacity. And so prior to the pandemic, about, I guess this would be maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they wanted to not put up the gay or the rainbow flag. And when they did, it got taken down and burnt like 3 times. So they had to, there's like shift of camps that you have to have a tent at the bottom of the flagpole. And you have to like rotate the LGBTQ2 plus community to try to keep the flag from being ripped down and burnt. And oh no, and when we had the ceremony to put it up, we had about 4 big trucks constantly circling us, you know, revving their engines and just being the dicks that you see on Parliament Hill right now. Like that's the way it is here. And that, you know, like I try to tell people, but I don't think they get it. So, and this is just a small town outside of Lethbridge, and Lethbridge is already like small town compared to something Toronto. Like I can't even possibly imagine how to conceptualize a similar place in Ontario for folks out there. So
Right, like
yeah,
I can imagine small town because I did live in a small town, but I think the fact that everything that you see on TV where it's like, oh, this is TV, this is not a symbolism of real life. This is real life. This is your story. This is what you've seen, and this is what happens to us LGBTIQ folks.
absolutely. And it was horrifying because we had a two-spirit elder who did an opening prayer and smudge. And, you know, my daughter was there, and my daughter's two-spirit. My daughter is not, you know, conforming. And one of the most liberating things I ever heard was our language never had she and him. We only had they and them. So when I
Right.
hear her use they and them, like to me, it's that decolonizing language anyway. So I think about like that's in the heart of Blackfoot territory, and you know, it makes me so angry. All of the things that are wrong in this world, and ironically, because as you know, they are the folks that are doing conversion therapy. Like the
Mhm.
strongest is in Alberta, and you know, even though we're outlawing it, it's all underground and it's become even more cultish, and it's already such a cult. And yeah, I think nationally people are starting to understand the sickness that's in Alberta with this truck convoy, right? Because Pat King, Misty Wind, they're all from here, and they're all, you know, perpetuating their hate in their, you know, toxic spirituality that's not even rooted in reality. Like these are not healed people in any capacity, representing themselves as natives. Like fuck, man, I've been walking my red road for quite a few years now, and I would never identify myself as some kind of elder or anything like that. So
Right.
it's just so incredible to me where people are, and then of course, as you
You
know,
know,
a lot of us have internalized racism. So then our own people become the perpetrators of the violence against us,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
sad.
yeah,
You know, it's interesting that these people that are touting freedoms have not protested for anybody else's freedom.
right.
So
Yeah.
is it a selfish protest? Absolutely it is.
So this Pat King and Missy Wind, they were harassing the Black Lives Matter movement here in Calgary, hey? And we were telling everybody, but people don't really listen, they don't care until it directly affects them, as you said.
Yeah.
So now the rest of Canada is seeing the type of violence that these folks have been perpetuating here now for years.
It's it really doesn't surprise me. It's like what are we willing to tolerate? I got into an argument with somebody on Facebook because they were like, not everybody's carrying that, and the movement is actually good, but the movement is blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, they just burnt a Canadian flag today. Like, what more are you willing to tolerate? What more is going to happen? What more are you going to say enough is enough? Like, these people are awful. Like, I don't like wearing masks either. I don't like it. I don't think anybody does. But we have COVID-19, which is a life-threatening illness, and it does manifest itself in different ways because viruses mutate and viruses spread.
I just got over it, hey. So this is my first week with a little bit more energy, but oh my God, it has been hell. And I know I need to just stop. I'm too exhausted to continue on, but that's life. And ironically, now these conservative politicians are like, oh my God, our base is protesting. We better do something about it and listen to them. So they're actually going to remove all the restrictions that there are here in Alberta by the end of the month. That's what they're going to do. And
I know,
so folks like myself are going to get sick again and again and again and again. And
Jason Kenney.
I know it's not going to stop any of the violence, because they've been violent before the pandemic. They're going to continue to be violent after. They're just going to find a new reason, a new terminology to, be that way. And it feels like, I don't know, 1930s Hitler times right now, where it's like you have this extremely angry mob that just is uncontrollable. You have a whole bunch of pearl-clutching politicians that won't do anything about it. We've been warning them for how long, they won't do anything. So I don't know what is going to happen here.
So what I absolutely love about being on this podcast is that we get to have an opportunity to share, listen, learn, and grow from Indigenous folks. That's the goal, right? Is to learn from the folks that are Indigenous to this land. Correct?
I hope.
So if you had been witnessing this behavior before and you're witnessing this behavior now, and I'm saying that you need to witness this and you need to listen and learn and whatever I can do to amplify, whatever I can do to whatever, that's what it's about, because we are in one of the most unsafe times in Canadian history at this particular moment. And I believe that it's all a ploy for Russia and Ukraine.
That's hey. Yeah, I know this issue that's
happening. It's a distraction,
right?
It's a distraction. They're wanting infighting so that way that it distracts from the real issue, and that's Russia and Ukraine.
I know, and we tell people the influence that Russians have had in our social media, and again, politicians are like, "What problem?" So
now they're seeing it now.
Well, and now it's out of control. It's so.
It was the same thing with COVID-19. They did not want to shut down Canada early enough.
No, and now look at it. Now we're just in such a mess. And it was hard because you watch the numbers in the States be so out of control under Trump. And we knew it was just a matter of time until it just seeped into here. And even with the so-called progressive prime minister, we're still not really seeing the mechanisms. And that's what makes me so infuriated with this convoy, is that we literally have no mandates. We really don't.
Right.
These are recommendations, they're guidelines, they're requirements, but never has the police come on your door, knocked on your door and said, you're breaking a mandate by leaving it. You have to stay in your home. They're not doing that. Instead, the worst case scenario I've seen is this street preacher who is such a jerk. Anyway, Misty Wind absolutely perpetuates it. And she's the one that everybody's talking about in Ottawa. Anyway, I'm getting off track.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. The worst case scenario I've seen is them arrest him, but he's purposely had like sermons and all sorts of stuff with like massive amounts of people, and everybody getting COVID was never good enough, right, as a reason to stop doing this. They just continued to perpetuate it's just so awful. Anyway, that's the worst case scenario that I have seen. I'm sure you've seen that video of that awful hockey player who got arrested on a pond, and he was just being a toxic male as usual. Like, a hockey culture is just rape culture. He's being this toxic male to this female police officer, and just being a cocky jerk. Finally gets arrested, finally gets taken down, and people are like, oh, look at the police overreaching. And it's like, nobody's talking about how disrespectful he was. I thought you guys were all pro police. I thought you guys were all like, follow the law,
Exactly.
and the moment it's a woman, it's the moment you're okay with your white males treating your women so poorly, right? Because that's the culture of misogyny,
So
patriarchy.
and that brings me to this question: when are we going to be protected?
Oh, never. We're surviving genocide. So, like, your bodies were used as slaves to build this country and the one south. Chinese, same thing. And then our people have just done everything we can to survive genocide. We have indigenous doctors nationally advocating for us to get vaccines first. And because colonization and Christianity internalized hate, you have the side of indigenous people that are like, supporting the convoy because they hate Trudeau, because they've been taught to hate Trudeau their entire life, and his father, and I'm sure the kids are next. Like, it's not logical, it's not rational. And then you have indigenous doctors saying, we have to survive this. This could kill us. And our people are like, I don't even want the vaccine. Well, yeah. I've had COVID. I would even argue twice I've had it. And thank God I haven't, had like permanent heart damage or something done. But like, I have high blood pressure. And I think from the first time, now I have sleep apnea, but I can't get Indian Affairs to send the check so that I could have a stupid machine. So I don't even know what to say. It's like, the colonized belief system, their government purposely perpetuates genocide. If I die tomorrow in my slave, Indian Affairs will be, oh, at least we didn't send that check. Not, oh, we are partially responsible for the continued genocide that we've inflicted on these people. Like, they don't get it. They're just like, oh, one less Indian for us, and that's how Canada is. Like, the citizens of Canada, because it's like, oh, one less person we have to have clean drinking water for, like that's Canada. That's their thinking.
We as much as it takes, we got to switch the narrative and amplify voices whenever we can, because this is getting out of control. There should be no reason that my voice would be heard over your voice. There should be no reason for it. There should be absolutely no reason for it. And another good way, another good thing that I'm on this podcast is we get to listen to somebody that is indigenous, that is in this country, that is not only experiencing this and seeing this firsthand, but using their platform to share, like, throughout the country and the world on what is happening in Canada, or what is perceived as Canada.
Yeah, right. Such a great way to say it, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, but vice versa, I don't think people understand the gravity of what conversion therapy is. Like, now that people are understanding the narrative of how wrong it was to take a whole group of people, raise them by a different race with a different religion, and be abusive to them for not conforming.
Right.
That's what conversion therapy is.
Yeah.
There's no nicer way to say it. That is what it is. Like, LGBTQ2+ is a normal part of our life and our society, but this religion demonizes it in the worst way. So now you have a whole section of people that are already hurt, confused in a patriarchal society, like, and I tell people that as a cis person, I don't have to question my gender. I've never had to question my gender. I was boy crazy in my teens, and anyone who knows me knows that's true. And even today, I'm still boy crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like committed to one guy. So, it's that bigger picture of that is never a struggle I've had to worry about. And I've been trying to be careful with my language and careful with how I present that, because I never want my daughter or one of her friends to feel like this isn't a safe place for me to be who I am and me to figure out who I am. Because that's the other thing, is that, it's questioning. Like, my daughter first came out as pan, and then she's like, no, mom, I think I'm a full lesbian, but what if she's kind of figuring out what that means too? Like, questioning is such a valid thing, I think, for folks to be going through with their sexuality, because Christ, I didn't even know there was half the options out there that there are. I had no idea. I was just like, whatever, I just like boys and I'm gonna always like boys, blah blah blah. And that's so easy.
Right.
That's the easiest walk in a patriarchal society.
Well, because we also had a lot of our identities erased. It's now that we're starting to get re-educated by these identities. So but again, the church, the Christian Catholic Church, wants to erase those identities and make them cease to exist because of their deity. That's what it is. I remember I found on Instagram Pastor Joe Dallas, who is very anti-gay. I would argue that he's gay himself. Tried to do a call to action in Canada to say that I am standing up against 2S LGBTIQ folks. And so all the church is going to do a call to action where everything after January 7th, they are going to be speaking against 2S LGBTIQ folks, and it's not of the Bible. But here's the good thing. I have a list of those folks. I have a list of those folks that spoke out on Sunday, and I have people that report to me. So if you think that you're going to be above the law to protect folks, and you're not going to want to listen to us, and not going to want to learn from us or to make us feel welcomed in your space, we'll see if the law is going to be at your side when you know that you're not supposed to be doing that in Canada.
Holy shit. The other day, yesterday, I found out one of the churches here. So there's this major center called Sheldon Schumer. It's like an urgent care facilities. It's the only thing we have close to a hospital in the downtown core. Kitty corner to it is a church that came out to say we are against LGBTQ+ as well. And I'm like, fuck, we're gonna have a protest in front of these motherfuckers. And but we haven't had that conversation because there hasn't been any time to have that conversation with folks, and because it was yesterday. And I'm like, these are the mofos that are going to be doing conversion therapy, along with some of the churches in my area, like in the east side here, that are not they're not conforming. They're the ones that are really perpetuating the hate. And now it's become a national movement because of these stupid convoy idiots. I don't think people understand the barriers for marginalized people. And you actually kind of said it already about this fellow. Internalized homophobia, like, is a real problem. Internalized transphobia, internalized, marginalization. Like, we suffer from that in so many capacities, right? As a Black man, as a gay man, and then as an Indigenous woman in the colonial system, like it's that oppression is internalized so many times. We become our own worst perpetuators of it. And then you have a white straight man trying to pretend to be straight, and he has that hate within himself, and then he's amplifying it. Like, Holy.
Yeah, on social media where he's spreading propaganda and trying to get the church in Canada to fight against two LGBTQ2IA folks. So it's unfortunate. I think the best thing about this is that it's already law. It's already reported, it's recorded, it's been law since January 7th. And so where they're trying to do a revolt, they're still not listening to 2S LGBTQ folks. They're not listening.
No.
They're intentionally not listening.
Yeah.
And guess what? When we have government support, when it comes to paid and unpaid services, so advertising and promoting, when it comes to consent on what you're able to consent to, you're not able to consent to abuse, and therefore you can't consent to a conversion therapy. When it comes to the Christian church doing whatever they can to fight against an already law where you can get up to, I believe, 5 years in prison for doing harms against 2S LGBTIQ folks.
Mm-hmm.
We got you on record. You decided that you wanted to do this. That is your fault.
Yeah.
We have told you time and time again, while presenting data to you, that we exist and we're not going away. Regardless of what they say. And I think this is the theme of this entire podcast. Regardless of what they say, regardless of what they do, regardless on how noisy and how much they cry their white tears, they are not able to get away from us, and we will not be erased.
Yeah. Oh no, it's never gonna stop. Never. And I'm so grateful to have you on here to talk that.
Thank you.
So for folks like me who are straight cis, when we see Islamophobia, transphobia, and homophobia, so we should be recording it and sending it to you. What are some other things that we should be doing?
I think the biggest thing is, if you see something, amplify those voices. Just amplify voices. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be judgmental, but don't be afraid to ask questions, because questions are made to be answered. So if you have a question, an appropriate question that is topical and has to do with the subject, continue on. But I think the not being able to ask those questions and not being able to have exploratory critical thought is what we're seeing right now, and why it's.
So I have a new job, and I don't know how sustainable it is. I'm actually like, do I tell them on Monday I can't work here? I don't know. But one of the things I learned from it was how stupidly expensive it is to transition from one sex to another, or to be non-binary. It's stupidly expensive here in Alberta. There's organizations called Skipping Stone that are trying to do that work of helping reduce the barriers for trans folks who are trying to convert, or non-binary people who are trying to go from a sex to non-binary. What is it like out there in Ontario? So you have to go through like fingerprinting, which is super expensive here. And then we have to do birth certificate changes, name changes. Like, it's a lot of expenses here. Because in Alberta, we've privatized registries and vital statistics. So it becomes like a constant fee system. And if there was one thing that I would like to see that barrier completely eliminated with, it's the cost to transition.
Right, I agree.
Yeah. So what is it like out there in Ontario for that?
I'm not really an expert on this subject, but what I can tell you that when people transition, it is not a one-day thing, and I think that is the biggest misconception that a lot of people have. A lot of people ask questions and speak to licensed mental health professionals about this.
So I have a little cousin that's up in Yellowknife, and they have to fly to Edmonton to get some services, and this was prior to the pandemic, and now they, of course, they can't. And I just, the people don't have any idea the barriers against those who are trying to understand who they actually are and talk to some non-judgmental licensed doctor about it. Like, people don't get it. They don't get how hard
Right.
this is, and the lack of services. Like, fuck, I'm a straight cis woman, and I feel like there's a lack of services because of like, white people are the people in charge of all these. So how are they going to understand racism? They don't understand our struggle.
Well,
So it's so hard to find counseling anyway, let alone if you're going through something like this. So yeah, continue.
well, it seems to me, just by monitoring behavior, is that some folks do not want to understand. They want things just the way they are. Hence, this is the freedom convoy.
Yeah.
This is the Flu Trucks clan. This
That's my favorite hashtag. Bar none. It's my favorite hashtag because like, they are so KKK Nazis. Like, I just been calling them Nazis, like, no, like, whatever, they're Nazis. They're Nazis. And
They
everyone's
are.
like, they're not Nazis. I'm like, they're fucking Nazis.
So remember to all of your listeners, you saw what you saw, and you saw what you saw for a reason. Do not let anybody tell you anything different than what you have seen, and don't let anybody erase your experiences and how it makes you feel. If somebody is going right on Wellington Street in downtown Ottawa, beating a drum when they are desecrating like Indigenous culture, wow. You've seen what you've seen for a reason. These are people that are literally doing whatever they can to erase you. Do not let them do it.
Oh, we have so much toxic spirituality right now happening with this movement, where you have these, like, so-called hippies. White privileged hippies, of course.
Yeah.
They never get it. So anyway,
So
I don't know. I just what are the organizations that people can follow you with as well to amplify your voice?
So follow me at MattAsh89. I have a huge project that I can't really talk about that is coming in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
You're going to love it. MattAsh89 is my handles on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to get off TikTok. But
I have this one thread going on Facebook, and it's attracted all the bootlicking police officers and their supporters, and so I've been banning people, and then now I'm getting even more hate. So it's just a matter of time until my entire social media just gets eliminated.
Oh, I know. Bring it on, motherfuckers.
I know, right? And all my so-called allies, not going after them at all. But oh my
allies,
God.
The word ally is coming at a place of privilege, and I don't like the word ally because like, I'm higher than you, and so I'm an ally for Ray Tay or whatnot. But yeah, follow me in there. Another person that is doing the work that is US based and international is Truth Wins Out. So Truth Wins Out on Twitter, and Truth Wins Out _org on Instagram, and Truth Wins Out on TikTok. It's my friend Wayne. He's basically did historical records for interviewing survivors and former leaders of conversion therapy that are not wanting to have conversion therapy in their realm. So so I'm working with them. Another good organization that I'm working with on an international spectrum is Outright Action International, and they are amazing, like working on making things fair and bans for bans of across the world. We all deserve to be safe
Yeah.
Like I'm working right now with somebody that is in Ghana that is doing the Kill the Bill campaign, because there's an anti-LGBTIQ bill that is out there right now that are wanting to send queer folks up to 10 years in prison just for being queer. We are like, white settler colonialism is a real thing.
It's the root
And
of
they're
this.
trying to switch the narrative.
Yep.
So be vigilant in anything that you do from this point forward, because it's not going to be easy, but we're not going to be erased.
No. And for anyone who might be, you know, a person of color, a woman of color, a trans person of color, like, know that you have folks on your side. And until my dying breath, I will be trying to amplify in any capacity I can, because I just cannot let this continue on. It's the root of colonialism, is erasing LGBTQ2 plus. So, you know, by continuing to be who you are meant to be, you are absolutely being decolonial in the way you
Right.
are, and just being yourself. Like, you're just going to be a happier person to be yourself. And
Exactly.
that's what I want. As your auntie, I can be your auntie. I know. Well, you know, and honestly, who do I feel safest around? It's the LGBTQ2 plus community, because that gendered violence, that male toxicity, it's not, like, it can be in there. Like, you see it especially in like a lot of the pride boards with the white males that are in charge of them. You see a lot of
Right.
that. But for the most part, like, that's the safer place. So, like, you and a friend named Chad, he's also gay. You know, so many of my personal friends, like, that's they're on the spectrum of LGBTQ2 plus somewhere. And it's just the safest place for someone like myself to be, because there's an understanding of oppression, internalized hate, everything, right? Like, we have so many commonalities. Colonialism, and the understanding of the, you know, the destruction that Christianity has played in our world, being in a Western society now. So anyway, I feel like I could talk to you all day. So I guess we better end this, because I asked you to come on my show and be on my show, and you were, and I miss you. And this is honestly like a regular conversation Matt and I have at like 11 o'clock at night. Like, if I like one of his Instagram things, or I retweet him, he's like, "What are you doing right now?" I'm like, "Oh my God, God help me."
Or a fight that I'm in, or
I know. What the fuck is happening, Matt?
I love you. It's so fun.
I know. I love you too. I can't wait to come see you out in Toronto. I
Yes.
just one day this pandemic will be manageable in some capacity.
It will be.
One day, right? Not now, but one day.
The positives is that Pfizer and I believe Moderna are coming out with new Omicron vaccines, which is going to make things a lot easier. So summer is coming.
Oh God, please. Like, I don't want to get Omicron again. It wasn't that bad. It was like a head cold. But you know, like, I have heart issues and cholesterol and shit. So, you know, and I'm exhausted and stuff. So I don't want to I don't want to roll the dice on that, man. That's not something I want to do. I got a little girl. Well, she's not too little anymore, but I have a life that I want to be here for.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep you on my everything, obviously, and solidarity always. And if and when you can announce something, you know, I will retweet the shit out of it. My hope is that my followers will not just follow you, but retweet, amplify you too, and do all that good work.
And I will do the same. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, Matt. I'm proud this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety or cultural first aid in all of them to create a safer space for Indigenous people of color, those with disabilities, and LGBTQ2 plus to speak. Thank you to authors Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of heretohelp.bc.ca about what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. Their work are those cultural action tools that I have said over 100 times in my podcast. So please support Indigenous work like that as a part of your reconciliation work and settler understandings. I'm just lucky enough to repeat them and highlight them here. Internalized racism, lateral violence is another form of violence marginalized people experience imposed on these lands. You can go to racialequitytools.org. What is internalized racism by Donna Bevins, but also if you are LGBTQ2+, I highly recommend looking at internalized hate and oppression and seeing sometimes how you might be amplifying it within your community, just as I, as an Indigenous person, has to do that on a regular basis within the Indigenous community. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee. That's afsc.org. Do's and don'ts bystander intervention. This is the one that I've said many times for if you're on the C train and you see a woman with a hijab being harassed by some anti-masker or whatever. If you see or experience racism in Alberta, you can report it at acttoendracism.ca or text at 587-507-3838. Indigenous have been sharing our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and public hearings just so it can be regularly disregarded no more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they're cutting violence prevention programs and services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay-straight alliances, a lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote for that person or party is going to negatively impact marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendation of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports on child welfare reform and violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the justice, educational, and health institutions with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from the election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running. This should be understood by all politicians, parties, community organizations, sports clubs. Great article I said out loud in episode 62 is Truth Before Truth, How Non-Indigenous Canadians Become Allies. Literally, if you Googled how to be an ally to Indigenous people, there are multiple articles now, so there's no excuses. If you're experiencing emotional distress after hearing anything we talked about today and want to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It is toll-free, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also text at hopeforwellness.ca. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, for immediate emotional assistance, you can call 844-413-6649. It's toll-free 24/7 crisis line as well. For non-Indigenous, there are usually distress center lines in your area and a functioning 211, or you can call 833-456-4566. Here in Alberta, there's a 60 Scoop Indigenous Society at ssisa.ca. Look for the hashtag #SurvivorDriven. And if you see and experience racism in Alberta, you can text 587-507-3838. For those who may not know about the LGBTQ2+ community, there's some wonderful resources under the Trevor Project. There's a trans lifeline, an LGBTQ2+ youth line. There's an LGBTQ2+ youth peer support that you can text as well. And of course, the kids help phone at 1-800-668-6868. Lifevoice.ca is the umbrella for the Trevor Project that has lots of LGBTQ2+ crisis supports. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started the podcast, to speak freely without interruption, tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure want to tell us theirs by people who know nothing about Indigenous colonialism, constant surveillance of our people, our protests, our vigils, and our rights. Microaggressions, people with internalized racism, people who become gatekeepers and live off the status quo, or who are so in their trauma that they stop people from doing the good work and deplete personal resources, which I would argue I'm that person right now. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, my granny, my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots, and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her I'm a second generation proud Calgarian. But again, if you are non-Indigenous, I highly recommend not using the term Native Calgarian. It really is a joke when you do it and shows your racism. And thank you to my husband, Darcy, for producing and editing this show. On top of being my husband, my childhood friend, and the father of our child, he's been my support down my red road. He has witnessed decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, who are blessed to learn from daily, I am honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. And I hope my daughter, my family, and my community will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these present day issues. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to previous donors for showing your support. You have no idea how much you saved my butt. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. If you value listening, watching, and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. I have a YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe. NativeCalgarian.com has the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. I want to give side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not Tradish. And my beautiful cousin responded, or you'd be in my dish. Thank you for listening.